Yo, what's up, guys? It is the new sensation, Bigger Notation. Today I'm going to be bringing you a IRL deck profile with actual cards today. Normally I don't really do these kind of deck profiles because I don't have a lot of the money for cards, but today I am bringing it in person, and the main reason is because I actually played in a webcam event yesterday, the Cardmarket Regionals, for March the 27th, I think it was the exact date, and I actually ended up winning the entire event with this deck, so I figured it would be much more appropriate for me to bring it to you in person. Originally I wasn't going to do a deck profile on the Shenron deck because this list is very similar to the one that I had been playing in the recent local tournament. That was from my friend Scrub Games. Shout out to him. He actually lent me this deck, so these aren't actually my cards because I don't have enough money for this deck. But shout out to him. Originally I wasn't going to do a deck profile on this deck, but I figured because I won an event with it, I thought that it would be appropriate, and I wanted to break down some of the card choices in the deck. And I did get permission from my mate, so he is very okay with me doing this deck profile, which I wanted to make sure because I didn't want to be dishonest and I didn't want to just steal his deck or anything. But let's get right into it. I was playing a much more aggressive version of the list with some of the new stuff from set 12, so it's not really aiming to get to turn 6 and use the leader effect. So the leader, most people should know by now, but when he attacks, you just get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and search for a Shadow Dragon card, add it to your hand, and then at the end of the turn, you can untap one of your Shadow Dragon cards, switch it to active mode, and then it has an Awaken at 3 life or less, of untapping 1 and drawing 2. You're not going to use the alternative Awaken because we don't run a yellow 4-cost unison in the deck. And on the flip side, just has an auto of drawing a card, and then at the end of the turn you get to untap all of your Shadow Dragons, which is huge, and then you get the tap 6 yellow to resurrect 7 Shadow Dragons from the drop area, which I never ended up using this effect in the tournament. I only got to turn 6 once, and I didn't even charge the 6 energy because I just slammed down a Salzino to rip out his hand and kill him with. Something that's a tiny thing, but it can be really important, is on your Awaken turn, when you're looking to Awaken on your turn, something that can be nice to do, and this is only if you're not looking for your secret rare, is attacking with the leader so that you get the top 5 search of the Shadow Dragons and then Awakening, because you value the top 5 search more than you value the draw card if you're looking for a Shadow Dragon, and the only situation where you're not looking for a Shadow Dragon is when you're looking for Salzino. So if you already have Salzino in hand and you can Awaken, you swing first, search the top 5, and then Awaken on the swing, just because it gives you more options on the pseudo draw card, because this lets you search the top 5, whereas the backside only lets you draw the top 1, so you don't get as many options. So getting right into the deck, for our secret we're running Salzino. This is the aggro deck, so Salzino is really easy to bring out. You can bring it out turn 2. Most of the times that's not a very good play because if they have a negate in hand, you just lose the game basically because you threw away your board and hand into that play. But bringing out turn 3 is pretty consistent and often a very strong play, because you're looking to kill them in turn 3 with this deck. I think I managed to bring him out turn 5 in 3 different games, so I actually got his auto off it 3 different times during the tournament, because this deck can potentially go into the long game as well, because it's got some tools to help survive as well as killing them. So for our other big finishers, we have 2 of the tournament pack Omega Shenron. He has an activate main, he's unique triple strike and has an activate main for 1 specified yellow. If your leader is a Shadow Dragon and you have 3 or more energy, and you warp 7 mono yellow Shadow Dragons from the drop area, then you get to draw a card and then play him. So a couple of things important to note: the reason that this deck is a turn 3 kill deck is because you have to have 3 energy for this card. So you wait until turn 3, you bring out this card, you can go into the secret rare, and you get a triple strike swing and then a quad strike string. It's just insane the things you can do on turn 3. Also, if this card gets counterplayed, you do still get the draw because it is part of the same effect. It's not a separate auto that happens when it comes into play. So if this does get counterplayed by like Trunks, you get to still draw a card. And last but not least, on your kill turn, you can actually potentially go into this card twice if you have both copies in hand, because you can play one by warping 7, and then you will most of the time have a 4-cost on your board, because it's very easy to bring out 4-cost with this deck. So then you can successor this off after swinging with it with a 4-cost to go into Cell, and then if you have enough Shadow Dragons left, you can bring out a second copy by warping another 7. So that's a really nice play, and that can potentially deal 10 damage for 2 energy, which is just insane. So for our other big hitters, we have 4 of this Omega Shenron. He's really, really amazing. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck. So you bring him down for 1 energy by sacrificing a Shadow Dragon with energy cost of 4 or less. And similarly with the other Omega Shenron, you get to draw a card in the same skill. So even if he gets counterplayed, you get the draw. He does have unique, like the other Omega Shenron, so you have to be watching out for that. You can only have 1 of him on board. If you could have multiple, this card would be so crazy. And he has an activate main once per turn, where you get to warp a Shadow Dragon from your drop area with an energy cost between 2 and 4 that isn't a Sin Shenron card, and then he gains the skills of that card until the end of your opponent's next turn. And you can also opt to take a life with the skill, which is great because often you want to self-awaken pretty early on, and getting down to 3 life can be pretty tricky against some of the slower decks. And the fact that it stays until your opponent's next turn is great, because one of the main targets is this next card, which has Barrier Blocker, which is Oceana's Shenron, the Animancer. So this is going to be the main target for Omega Shenron. It's just so strong. And the main thing that it does when you're not using it for Omega Shenron is the Activate Main skill. So it has an Activate Main Burst 1, so that's Burst 1 is just great for this deck because you want to be filling up your drop area for these Omega Shenron targets, and so that you can warp 7 with this Omega Shenron. So you burst 1 and you discard this card from your hand. Then you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 yellow Shadow Dragon card with an energy cost of 8 or less among them to your hand, and then shuffle your deck, and you can only use and activate main on copies of this card once per turn. So the thing to look out for is you can only use this once per turn, and you also cannot grab your 9-drops in Shenron with this skill. But other than that, this card almost searches out your entire deck. It's almost impossible to whiff with this card because there are only 5 cards that are not Shadow Dragons in this deck. It also has Barrier Blocker, which means that if you copy the skills with Omega Shenron, the Omega Shenron will be a 30k Barrier Blocker throughout your opponent's next turn, and your leader can restand your Omega Shenron so you can swing with it as well. And it also has an auto of when this card attacks, you choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and switch it to rest mode. And if the card you switch to rest mode will have an energy cost of 2 or less, you get to KO it. So Omega Shenron also gets that skill, which is insane because you can then attack with it, rest one of your opponent's battle cards, and if it's a pesky card like Dark Powered like Marseillan, which really hinders some of the cards in this deck, or something like that, just like a cantrip, or even like some of the Broly, if you're against a red Broly swap and they haven't awakened, you can kill off their 1-drop. Otherwise you're just resting your opponent's battle cards. You get a 30k swing, and then because of your leader to restand your Omega Shenron, you also get a 30k barrier blocker during your opponent's next turn, which is incredible. And this came in really clutch in my last match. It was on stream. If you want to watch it, go check out the Cardmarket streams. I'll try and find the link down below, but if I can't, it will just be under Cardmarket DBS. I was in the feature match for the last round. I was against a red Broly swap player. Shout out to him, he was a really good player, he played it really nicely. But this Omega Shenron, Oceana Shenron combos came in so clutch against him because I was resting down all of his 4-drops and his bigger Broly BRs, and because they have the Servant skill, they were not able to restand during his next turn. And I was purposefully not killing off his 1-drops and his smaller battle cards because it was first of all more value to rest his bigger ones because I didn't want to have to deal with those attacks, but also if I killed off his 1-drop Broly BRs, his leader would let him play out bigger ones from his hand for with the simple cost of discarding a card, and that would have been detrimental to my game plan because he would have brought them out during my turn, which meant that my 9-drops in Shenron that was on my board wouldn't negate his swap skill during his turn, so I would have basically lost if I'd killed any of his 1-drops, so I was very cautious to play around that, and that's why I was resting his 7 cards. But this card just allows for maximum consistency, and then it's one of the best targets to copy with Omega Shenron. And speaking of consistency, we have 4 copies of Ice Shenron, the Cryomancer. This card has, the main reason you run this card is for its activate main, so you pay 1 yellow, you discard this card from your hand, and you get to play any of your 1-cost Shadow Dragon cards with an energy cost of 1 from your deck, and then its skills are negated for the turn, so you have to watch out for that. This is generally your turn 1 play. If you're not using this effect turn 1, you are generally better to just play the balls from your hand, because then you can go straight up the chains in the same turn, and otherwise the skills would be negated if you brought them out with this card, so you have to watch out for that. Another effect that this card has, which actually came in really clutch in a couple of matchups, was the counterplay effect. If your leader is mono yellow, you play this card, so it costs 2 energy because the card costs 2, and the card being played is played in rest mode. So this is actually amazing because it is one of the few counterplays that hits unison cards, so a lot of people don't expect their unisons to be counterplayed, but you can just, if you leave 2 energy open, you can play down this card, and often in the later turns like turn 4 or turn 5, if you've not killed them by then you can definitely be safe to leave 2 energy open, because often you have a board full of blockers or something like that. And then this just adds that extra layer of defense, and this also came in really clutch against the Red Broly BR player that I mentioned earlier, because he got to 6 counters on his Piccolo Junior unison, and that meant that he could bring out the Pan from his deck and potentially another card, but I just dropped the Ice Shenron from my hand to mean that the cards being played got played in rest mode, and so I staved off 2 attacks from his -6 on his unison, which was actually huge for the game. And another important thing to realize about this card is that this means that you do not have to run 4 copies of all of your balls anymore like you did back in Stat 10, because if this card is effectively just extra copies of your balls. So speaking of balls, we have 3 1-star balls. I'll go through the different chains that I'm running at the moment. So 3 1-star balls. This just brings out your Sin Shenron. The only Sin Shenron I'm running in this deck that can be brought out by this card is the 4-drop. So I'll just go straight onto that. We have 4 copies of the 4-drop. Honestly, I could see this card being cut down to 3, but at the same time it's really, really strong. Often you only need to bring out 1 or 2 copies of it throughout your game, but it is just so amazing because the fact that it stops your opponent's leader from attacking if they've got it in rest mode is so amazing, because oftentimes leaders will have even just drawing a card on the leader swing, denying your opponent that draw 1 can be so detrimental to the game plan. And it also staves off early aggression because it stops a swing and it's a blocker. So this card is really, really strong. I would consider cutting it down to 3 if I were to go for the more aggro route of the deck, because there is an even more aggressive version of this deck that you can play. But because the Cardmarket tournament that I won was best of 1, I opted to play 4 copies of this card, and my reasoning behind that was because a lot more people would be playing aggressive decks because they want to take me by surprise and they want to just try and rush me down, because best of 1 means that I wouldn't have a side deck. So I was trying to prepare for those much more aggressive matchups, and that same reasoning leads me to running the 3 copies of the 9-drops in Shenron. Again, if this were the like pure aggression version, where it focused solely on the raid Shenrons, and it even ran the Pan Great Ape Whisperer that brought itself out when your leader awakens, then I would actually cut this card, and definitely in best of 3 I would move this card to the side deck, because it's only good in specific matchups against aggressive decks. But because I thought that I'd be playing against a lot of aggro during this tournament, I opted to play 3 copies of this card, because something I like about this card game in particular is that no cards in your hand are ever going to be dead throughout the entire game, because you can just opt to charge them. And so in matchups where I felt like this card was lackluster, I just charged the 9-drop because I knew that I wouldn't need it. And this card, along with the Cell Xeno, are the only 2 cards that one cost 10k in the deck, so you can definitely tap out and still feel safe, because all of your hand, except for these cards, will be 5ks. But this card actually came in really clutch again, especially against that Red Broly match, because I could negate his swaps every single time he went up the chain. So that meant that he was basically forced to only play 1 Broly BR per turn, or go up the chain 1 turn at a time, and that was really detrimental. And the fact that this ignores barrier through its negating skills is amazing as well, because it meant that I could hit out things like the Broly BR secret rare and negate its skills completely as well. And also the fact that it's blocker and revenge is amazing, because it helps you deal so much with the early aggression. This came in clutch against, I played against Vegex. My matchups throughout the day were: game 1 I played against Dark Broly, game 2 I played against Turles, game 3 I played against a red-green launch, I believe, game 4 I was against Vegex, game 5 I think I was against, I can't remember what I was against round 5, but game 6 I was against a much more control version of the Shenron deck, and then game 7 I was on stream and I was against the Red Broly BR player in the finals. And this came in clutch against Vegex and against the Red Broly BR player. The revenge especially against Vegex, but I was purposefully using this to block the leader attacks against the Broly BR player, and that was because I wanted to make sure that he didn't connect his 20k crit attacks on my leader, because that would have cost me so much to out combo, and it just would have lost me so much in terms of tempo and value. And if I blocked any of his Broly BR cards with revenge, it would have triggered his leader effect, which would have let him go up the chain even further and rip out my hand even further. And against any aggressive decks, especially Red Broly BR, you want to be sacrificing things like value for longevity, because you are the slower deck. Even though this is the aggressive version of Shenron, you're the slower deck against a Red Broly BR deck, and you're looking to just wall up, stall out the game for just a little bit until they take themselves down pretty low on life, and then you can kill them on the clapback with some Omega Shenron and Cell Xeno players. So for the next chain, I ran 2 negative 5-star balls. This could potentially go up to 3, and even I wouldn't recommend putting this up to 4, because you run 4 copies of the Ice Shenron. You probably don't need 4 copies of any of the balls in this deck. But putting this up to 3 is a good option if you are looking to play the pure aggro version, and if you're looking to play it in a best of 3 format, you can cut out the 9-drops in Shenrons and put this up to 3, and then the card that it brings out is the Raid Shenron, and if you're playing the pure aggro version, I'd recommend putting this at 4, so that you always have a target for your 5-star balls. And then again, just cutting out the 9-drops and moving them over to the side deck for matchups that are much more aggressive. So the 5-star ball actually doesn't have an energy cost to bring out the Raid Shenron, which is really key, because you basically get to bring this out for 1 energy. And this guy is a 10k critical, which is in itself just really nice for 1 energy, and when it attacks you get to add up to 1 card from your life to your hand, and then if you did add a life, he gains 5k power. So this is again more self-awakening, and you can potentially, it's really easy to take yourself from 5 to 3 in this deck, because you can use Raid Shenron, and then you can sacrifice your Raid Shenron to bring out an Omega Shenron, and then copy a skill and take a life with the Omega. But you can even take yourself from 6 to 3 if you copy if you do that play but copy the Rage Shenron skill, and then swing and take another life with the Omega Shenron. So you can go from 6 to 3 life with this deck, and then self-awaken yourself, and that's actually a really nice play. Often I choose not to take myself from 6 to 3, but there are definitely times when I go from 5 to 3 or 4 to 3, and this card is just a really, really good early game play, especially against any kind of mid-range or control decks. So definitely, and against Dark Broly, I especially recommend going into this chain, because you want to be aggroing them down to force them to feel like they need to aggro you down back to have a chance of killing you. Because if you go into the Sin Shenron line, they're just going to remove it with their Dark Broly Uncontrollable Berserker. If you go into this, it's not worth them removing. And you can make many more plays because this only costs 1 energy, whereas the Sin Shenron line will cost 3 energy to go to the 9 drop. And this applies pressure, and if you keep yourself even if you keep yourself at 4 life, if you can bait them into swinging with their red Dark Broly, the 7 drop, before dropping a Heartfelt Plea, then you can kill it with a Haze Shenron, which I'll explain later. But this is just amazing against Dark Broly, because the turn before they awaken, when you hit them down to 4 life, you can bring out this card and just go mega aggressive on them and force them down to 3, or in my Dark Broly match in round 1, I managed to force him down to 2 life, I think, before he could awaken. And then just completely won the game after that in terms of ward presence. So that chain is definitely best option to go into against Dark Broly. And I have 2 copies of 2-star Ball. This is for the Haze Shenron line, and the card that it brings out is, I have 3 copies of Haze Shenron, the Poison Monster. Originally I was running this card at 2, but I found that 3 copies was amazing, because when I had 2 copies of this card, I always got really worried playing the 2-star Ball, because I always thought that I wouldn't have a target, and oftentimes I didn't. But upping this to 3 was definitely a really good call. This card's just really nice if you don't have very much to do on your turn, because you can play it down for a total of 2 energy from the 2-star Ball, apply some crit pressure, but also gain some value back by adding a card back from the drop area. And the utility on this card is really amazing, because you can add back cards like Ice Shenron, because in case you want the counterplay skill during your opponent's turn, you can add back Oceana Shenron to get another search, you can add back any of your balls in case you want to go up another chain, and then you can add back a couple of the utility cards, which I'll get into in a little bit. So I like to think of this Haze Shenron chain as kind of the middle point between the Sin Shenron and Rage Shenron, because Rage is very aggressive and Sin Shenron is very defensive. And this is kind of, it gives you some value, but it also applies some crit pressure. And then for the last of the Haze Shenron chain, I have 4 Haze Shenron Venomous Mist. This is much more of a utility card than anything, because when it's comboed with, you can discard another Shadow Dragon and KO one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost greater than your current energy in rest mode. This came in really clutch against the Broly BR matchup, obviously, because most of their cards were greater than their energy, and I actually managed to KO his secret rare with this card, because I negated its barrier through with the 9-drop, and then he swung with it, and I just dropped down the Haze Shenron and killed it, and that let me kill him on the clapback next turn. But it's also amazing against Dark Broly, because if you pressure them down early with the Rage Shenron, then they can feel forced to awaken on turn 2 or turn 3, and that can oftentimes mean that they are dropping the 7-drop Dark Broly and swinging at you to try and kill you that turn, because they know that they'll die if they don't kill you that turn. And if they swing with the 7-drop Dark Broly before they awaken, you can just combo this, discard another Shadow Dragon and kill the 7-drop, and that locks them out of playing Heartfelt Plea, and then they lose so much tempo from that play, and you often just win the game on the spot if they do that. So this card is amazing against almost every single deck. And that is it for the Haze Shenron line, and that's all the balls that I play. So in total I have 2 Haze balls, 2 Rage balls, 3 1-star balls, for a total of 7 actual balls, and then I have 4 Ice Shenron for 11 essentially copies of the balls. but I also have Oceania Shenron, which I kind of consider to be another copy of the balls because it can search out. It looks at the top 5, and the chances that you get a ball in those top 5 is very, very high. So I effectively have 15 copies of balls in this deck, which means that you'll almost always have a ball turn 1. I've only ever not had a ball turn 1 in one game of testing, and I still even managed to win that game. But luckily that didn't happen throughout the tournament. So onto the more utility side of the cards, I run 3 Oceania Shenron Swift Spirals. So something to know about this card is that it has a dual attack, and that's amazing because if you are looking to go much more aggressive, you can copy this card's skill of dual attack for your Omega Shenron, and he also has an auto burst 1 of when he's comboed with, you get to restand one of your Shadow Dragons in the battle area. So this essentially lets you make use of a blocker twice if you have a copy of it in your hand, because you can block with your battle card and then combo this to restand it, and the burst 1 will fill up your drop area more for your Omega Shenron plays. Something I just remembered about this Haze Shenron that's really important is you can actually EX evolve this on top of the 3-drop Haze Shenron for free, and it brings itself out in active mode, so you get a double strike swing at 20k for absolutely free. So a lot of people don't see that coming, a lot of people forget that effect of the Haze Shenron, just something I forgot to mention when going over that line. But that's really good for aggressive plays, and then Oceanus is great for more defensive plays. You only get to restand a battle card during your opponent's turn, so it doesn't give you an extra attack or anything, because that would be bonkers. And then for the last of the Shadow Dragon stuff, I have 3 Nuova Shenron Flameshot Unleashed. This card is so amazing for the deck. He's got Unique, and he reduces himself down to a 1 cost if you have a yellow Shadow Dragon in play and your leader is a Shadow Dragon. And it also has an Activate Main Burst 2. You get to switch this card to Rest Mode, and then you get to play a mono yellow Shadow Dragon from your drop area with energy cost between above 2 and 19k power or less, but you cannot have another copy of a Shadow Dragon out with the same character name. So for example, if you have Oceania Shenron out, or one of the Oceania Shenrons, you cannot bring out this Oceania Shenron because they're both Oceanuses. And then also for the rest of the turn, you can't bring out cards from your drop area. So you can only use this effectively once per turn. It's a hard once per turn. A couple of things to note about this card that are really, really important. Obviously, first off, it has Unique, but second off, you can play it for 1 energy, but it's a 4 cost, and you can also play your Omega Shenrons, who are 8 costs for 1 energy. So you can bring out each of these. So you can, if you have any of your Shadow Dragons on board, you can play down this guy, use its burst 2, and switch it to Rest Mode. And then bring out another card from the drop area, and then you can sacrifice that other card to go into the Omega Shenron, copy a skill from your drop area, and then 8 plus 4 makes 12, and for 2 energy you've managed to bring out Celzino, which is amazing. And because these cards both have Unique, after you use Successor to kill them, you can then play down more copies of each of those. So that's just a really strong combo that's good to keep in mind. And another strong combo that is good, and this is the best card to bring out with the Nuova Shenron throughout the entire game, and this is probably one of the better cards to copy the skills of with Omega Shenron as well, is the 1 Surprise Attack in Chiron Shenron. So it's double strike, it has an EX Evolve skill, but that doesn't matter because we're not running any targets for it. We're only playing this card with the intention of putting it in the drop area off of a burst effect, or comboing it off or discarding it off of a Haze Shenron. We want this card in the drop area. And the reason being is that it has an auto of, if your opponent plays a battle card or a unison card, you can choose that card, switch it to Rest Mode, and negate the skills for the turn. So this card is just amazing because it just allows you so much interruption and interaction between the players, because if they go to counterplay any of your cards throughout your turn, you can switch that counterplay card to Rest Mode, and then during their turn you can also switch their cards to Rest Mode. And again, this hits our unison cards, so this is really good to bring off of Nuova Shenron, and the reason being is Nuova Shenron negates the skills of the card that it brings out, but it's only for the turn that it is played on. So during your opponent's turn, this auto will actually be live if it's brought out with Nuova Shenron, and that means that you can still be resting your opponent's cards when they go to play them, which is amazing. And I really want to up this card to 2 copies, but this list, and I don't actually own 2 copies of the Neutron Shenron, and my friend who I was borrowing this deck of also doesn't have a second copy, so I wasn't able to play 2 copies for the tournament, but luckily I managed to mill this card, I think in 2 or 3 games whenever I activated the Nuova Shenron, which was really amazing. Like, this card's so insane when you bring it off of Nuova. Definitely probably the MVP of the entire tournament, just so insane. Against my red-green launch matchup, my opponent went to Overrealm into Fu the Dark Banisher, the triple attack Fu that you tap for to overwhelm it out, and every time I use a skill, I have to warp a card from my hand. And so I had this card out, and I had the 9-drop Sin Shenron out, and so I just used the 9-drop Sin Shenron to negate the Fu skills, used the Naturon Shenron to switch it to rest mode, and then he just tapped out 4 energy. He'd completely tapped out, and he wasted his Overwhelm skill for the turn, and he couldn't do anything with the card he brought out, and then I just killed him on the next turn with the Cell Xeno play. So for the last 4 cards of the deck, I am just running 4 copies of the Super Combo, Krillin, but moments before comeback. This is a 50 card list, you've got to keep it at 50 for consistency. And Krillin is the best super combo for this deck in my opinion, because you get to 4 life really easily, because you're looking to self-awaken yourself in a lot of matchups, and if you're not looking to self-awaken, you're against a very aggressive deck, and so you'll be at 4 life very quickly in that matchup as well. And also this lets you put back targets for your balls. If you have any in hand, you get to put them back to the bottom of your deck, which is great for gaining value off of your balls. And it also allows you to dig deeper during your opponent's turn for the Haze Shenron, the Venomous Mist, and also for the Oceanus Shenron Swift Spirals, because those get really strong effects when comboed with as well, so they can also be really defensive, and that is why I chose this super combo over like a Zamasu super combo, because it can be used offensively as well as defensively, and it also offers exceptional defensive capabilities in this deck specifically, because you can actually dig for specific cards that would really help during your opponent's turn and when your opponent's trying to kill you. So that is the deck profile, and that is the deck that I won with in the Cardmarket event yesterday. I really hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and definitely be sure to check out my final match against the Red Broly BR player on the Cardmarket stream. I'll try and find a link to that below. I'm also going to be featuring on the Senzu Pop channel, and I believe the Lookout DBS channel as well, with this deck profile going more in depth into all of my card choices and all of my matchups. So definitely be sure to check them out as well. I'll try and find a link to those as well once I've featured in them, and I will put those in the description as well. Shout out to Scrub Games for lending me the deck and helping me build the deck. Well, he essentially built the deck, but giving me good advice on like all of the card choices and different plays that I can make throughout the day. And shout out to the Scrub Squad group chat, always having my back and always being there to lend me cards and just having a good time. Thank you for all the support. If you want to see more deck profiles like this and any gameplays with this deck in particular, but also some other decks, definitely be sure to drop a big old sub down below and smash that like button. Give me some feedback, give me some comments if you like the in real life IRL deck profiles or not, and also any card choices that you might want to change for this deck specifically, because I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on the deck and whether you thought that this was the correct build or not. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.